Good evening and welcome to Global Focus News. Tonight headline is International Law Still Useful in Resolving the Russia vs Ukraine War? When we say international law, we mean the rules countries agree to follow, namely no invading neighbors, protecting the civilians and respecting the borders. But the big question is, do these rules actually work when a powerful country breaks them? Let's find out.
On the ground, the issue is clear. Russia's invasion broke the most basic rule of international law, the prohibition of the use of forces in Article 2.4 of United Nations Charter. What does Article 2.4 of UN Charter actually say? It states that all members should refrain in their international relations from the threat or use the force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. In simple terms, countries are not allowed to attack or threaten the borders or independence of other countries. This principle has been tested before. In the Nicaragua and United States 1986 case, the International Court of Justice ruled that the US violated international law by supporting armed groups and mining Nicaragua's harbors. The court said those actions breached Nicaragua's sovereignty and violated Article 2.4. Today, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a direct parallel. Just like in Nicaragua, sovereignty has been violated, but on even larger scale. Civilians are suffering, cities are destroyed, and humanitarian law which protects civilians is being ignored. Therefore, the problem isn't just the war itself, it's whether international law can still act as a real referee or if it's just a rule book that no one listens to.
International law does provide frameworks, system of rules for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and humanitarian protection. So institutions like the UN, the International Court of Justice (ICJ), and the International Criminal Law, which is ICC, are supposed to mediate disputes and punish violations. So one of the most important sets of rules is the Geneva Conventions. The fourth Geneva Convention, especially Articles 27 to 34, says civilians must be protected during war. It guarantees their right to the safety, dignity, and freedom from violence. So in simple terms, you cannot attack civilians, hospitals, or schools, and you also cannot use starvation or forced displacement as weapons. So these principles has been tested in real cases. In the Bosnian genocide case, which in 2007, the court found that Serbia failed to prevent genocide in Bosnia. Even though Serbia did not directly commit the genocide, but the court ruled that states have a duty to protect civilians and to punish those responsible. So in theory, international law gives legitimacy as it turns sanctions and condemnations to legal responses, not just political opinions. But the challenge is making sure these protections are enforced in practice.
But here's the catch. Enforcement is where things fall apart. The UN Security Council is supposed to act as the World Emergency Committee. But because permanent members like Russia have veto power, they can block any resolution against themselves. That's why enforcement often stalls. It's not that the law doesn't exist, it's that politics prevents action. The International Criminal Court also faces limits. It can only prosecute leaders of countries that have accepted its treaty. For example, the Rome Statute. Russia hasn't signed it, so its leaders fall outside ICC jurisdiction. This shows how powerful states can avoid accountability simply by staying outside certain legal systems. And then there's politics. A good example is the Kosovo Advisory Opinion. Kosovo declared independence from Serbia, and the ICJ ruled that this declaration did not violate international law. But here's the problem. Whether Kosovo was recognized as a state depended on politics, not law. Some countries accepted it, others refused. That's why enforcement is weak. International law can declare what is legal, but without political will, those rulings often remain symbolic. is like a referee blowing the whistle in football. The rules are clear, but if the player ignores the whistle, the game still continues.
Hence, how do we fix this? First, stronger accountability mechanisms. A famous example is the Nuremberg trials after World War II. These were international military tribunals held in 1945 and 1946, where the top Nazi leaders were prosecuted for crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. It was the first time leaders were held personally responsible under international law, instead of hiding behind the excuse of just following orders. That precedent matters today, as it shows that even powerful leaders can be brought to justice if the world agrees to enforce the law. Second, it is the reparation frameworks. Reparation means compensation in terms of money or rebuilding for the victim and destroyed communities. The Chojor factory cases in 1928 is a classic example. Germany has unlawfully seized a factory in Poland, and the court ruled that Germany must pay reparation to restore what was lost. Lawyers call this principle restitutio in integrum, which means restoring things as if the wrongful act had never happened. Applied to Ukraine, this means victims deserve compensations and destroyed towns must be rebuilt, not just condemned in words. And thirdly, it is suggested to have a layered collective security guarantees. Right now, the United Nations Security Council is often blocked by the veto powers, so action stalls. Layered securities means other regional organizations like North Atlantic Treaty Organizations NATO or the European Union should step in to support enforcement when the United Nations cannot act. Think of it like having a backup referee in a football match. If the main referee is silent, the assistant referees can still blow the whistles. In practice, this means NATO or the European Union can provide military support, sections of humanitarian corridors, while the United Nations continue to set the legal framework. This layered approach spreads responsibility across multiple institutions, making it harder for the one veto or political deadlock to paralyze the entire system. In short, these reforms won't erase politics, but they can reduce the gap between law and enforcement, making international law more practical. Instead of just condemning violations, law could help stop them and repair the damage.
Those what we have learned that international law still matters. It provides moral, legal guidance and document violation. However, the enforcement is weak and politics often overshadow the law. In conclusion, international law is useful but not fully practical in resolving the Russia vs Ukraine war. Its effectiveness depends on reforms, stronger enforcement and genuine cooperation between the countries. Thank you for joining us on Global Focus News.